Livingston, and today on the show I'm going to be speaking to Jimmy Barnes, who runs a nonprofit regarding human trafficking called Breaking Out Corporation. And so, Jimmy, I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for coming on the show. Um, Also, it's a little unorthodox of an interview for the audience, but a little later I'll explain why I wanted to have you on the show today. And so I thought we would just kind of dive in for anybody that isn't really aware of human trafficking or what that is. Let you just kind of explain exactly what it is that you do.
Sure. What we do is we take the awareness a little bit further. Um, Domestically, here we are all licensed investigators, private investigators. So we do investigations of human trafficking. We do them alongside law enforcement, local and federal. And what's unique is we can take that case when it crosses the borders and actually travel abroad where we do the rescues to get the victims home.
Gotcha. Okay, and so just to kind of explain a little bit further, I mean, the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is that we met in person. You started explaining to me that you do actually go overseas, and some of the countries you were talking about were like Costa Rica and stuff like that. So I thought, this would be a good opportunity to raise awareness about this and what the needs are, especially to an expat community that is so interested in countries like Costa Rica, Ecuador, a lot of those South American and Central American countries. So just to kind of set the plate a little bit better, can you explain exactly what is human trafficking?
Sure. Human trafficking is summed up in one word: is slavery. Um, it's against your will. You're being forced into forced prostitution, labor, domestic servitude. Uh, we deal a lot with the prostitution or the sex slavery. We also have handled a few of the labor trafficking cases. Um, it's all ages, it's all types. It's not just one type of person, but you're being forced into something that you don't want to do, such as prostitution and so forth, um, under pretty harsh conditions,
Wow. Okay.
especially overseas.
Wow. Okay. So, so I guess, not to jump around too much, but how did you get started with this work?
I've been licensed as a private investigator for about 15 years now, and I used to do a lot of missing children cases that would bring me overseas. And doing some of those cases is when I came across. At the time, I had no idea what human trafficking was either. Um, so, by doing that, and I realized that we do have some gaps in this country to help these people. So I think being private, we can fill some of those gaps with the traveling and being able to go where we need to go to
Sure.
get them.
Yeah, that's great. So, I guess just to kind of dive a little bit deeper, can you give us some actual examples or maybe just some stories or scenarios that you see and run into regarding countries like Costa Rica or other countries?
Sure. I mean, we have cases where a girl or a woman or a victim, is signing up for something else. It could be modeling. It could be anything where she thinks she's going to be making more money and having bettering her life. Um, and what the traffickers do is, they bring you overseas because overseas, you don't exist over there. In this country, when you're missing, people look for you. You might make the news and so forth. Overseas, you don't exist. So a lot of times they will bring you overseas and into a brothel, for example. We've had girls that were intending to go into modeling. We've had them on a school trip where they're teaching English overseas, for example, in different countries to students as part of the university. And once they're there, they realize that it's not a modeling contract or so forth. You know, but
So,
it starts here in this country. In other words, I actually had a case where they were advertising to get models, and you know, parents brought their children and so forth. And to make a long story short, the next day the parents got a call that your daughter made it. Have her on a bus at 6 in the morning. We're gonna do a photo shoot in New York City. So parents, of course, thought they can make a lot of money. They're gonna be my daughter's gonna be a model. We found those girls in 3 different countries. Okay, so they weren't brought to New York. You know and unfortunately, what they didn't know for a long time, because the traffickers had the girls call home every week, as if everything was okay and they were doing well.
Wow.
So they had no idea what situation they were in.
So how did that? I mean, how did they actually end up uncovering that something was wrong? Because of the amount of time that went by without them seeing them, or what?
Well, actually, we were in Costa Rica, and we were doing a rescue there, and we found 2 Americans, girls, and they were the ones who told us the story, what happened, how they got there.
So the parents wouldn't have even
So we were
actually
able to,
found them if it hadn't been for the coincidence that you were there doing another
right?
rescue. And so wow, that is phenomenal. That's just insane to think about. And when you start thinking about all these missing cases and all that, I wonder how many are actually in similar situations where they're no longer in the United States.
Absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely.
Wow. What and so that was Costa Rica, and said you said you were there for another actual you were working on another case in Costa Rica. Was that a similar situation or something completely different?
Yeah, you know, Costa Rica is uh, considered almost a transit country. I believe it's still a transit country. So a lot of times these victims stay in that country or in that brothel for maybe 2 3 weeks, and then they're going to move, and they might move them to the Dominican Republic, they might move to Colombia, because the new batch of victims is coming in. So it's an ongoing thing. They have a ring to work through.
Wow.
So there's always cases out there. It's always like that. A lot of underage in Costa Rica as well.
So let me ask you then too, because earlier you mentioned something about teaching English, thinking that they're going to be teaching English, and then they get in, they get forced into
Yeah,
this as well. So can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I know that
yeah,
there's a
well,
lot of
sure.
there's a lot of people that
Yes,
are going to be
we get
interested in
cell
that.
program, where students actually spend time and they go to other countries to teach English, you know, for credits for the university and so forth. And we found a group that was running that, and what they were doing is when the students arrived, they would take their passports right away, and after a few weeks, they live on a compound, and when a student would disappear, so forth, they would tell everybody else, oh, they got fired, they were sent home. And what we had is somebody in Dubai, and this is coming from the Orient. Uh, it was Philippines. They were in Dubai, and a couple of the students were partying in a bar, and they went to one of the legal brothels, and they found one of the prior students that was supposedly sent home. And we found out later, of course, she wasn't sent home; she was sold, and
Wow.
they were selling these young women like that in other countries.
So what
So
I
that's
guess the common denominator too that I've heard in these two
we're going around to
stories.
different universities.
Yeah. Well, it seems like the common denominator that I've heard in both these stories is that it was almost coincidence or luck or some kind of a higher power that uh, made it discoverable, I guess. And so it just kind of shows. I mean, it was just pure coincidence that they were able to be
Sure,
rescued. So
sure.
how do we? I guess how do we change that? How do we make it more intentional? How do we get
Well,
more?
we could change that by educating people on what not what to look for. First rule of thumb when you go overseas, you don't give your passport to anybody. And if your employer per se requires you to give your passport, turn around and go home, because that's your passport. You have a right. And I believe just educating people on even the other students in that situation, if they knew what to look for or flags that would come up, maybe they could have reported it sooner. And it's I think that educational awareness part of it is very important for that reason.
Yeah. What about
These guys are always improving their techniques
right?
as we
And
get smarter. they get smarter.
Right.
You know,
They're gonna adapt and they're gonna change whatever they're doing in order to keep it
sure.
alive. Yeah, sure. So what for expats that are living in Costa Rica, Central America, South America, what kind of signs or things should they be looking for to be able to help and make a change in this? I guess really.
Sure. For one, especially a lot of those countries, prostitution might be legal. Okay, I know Costa Rica it is legal. However, it's regulated by the government there, so you have to be, basically a citizen of Costa Rica. So when you see girls from other countries working that scene, whether it's the Ukraine or Americans, then that's a flag because they're not there to work it legally. If a lot of times we talk to girls or victims, I say, men or women, uh, and ask them simple questions. Maybe down the street there's a McDonald's. There's a McDonald's everywhere. A coffee shop, and how do I get there? And they don't know where that is because they never been outside or seen it. And that's a flag. Um, there's plenty of flags like that you want to look for. How much do they get paid? And they might not be able to say a solid answer. Um, so when that happens, we want to report that in a different country. You want to report that to your local embassy.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
you know,
What about though? I mean, that's
you
assuming
know,
then that somebody's actually frequenting, maybe a brothel or a location like that.
bars or even restaurants.
Okay,
Yeah,
uh,
it just talks. They might not know.
gotcha. Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking, a lot of our audience is not going to necessarily be in those kind of environments that where necessarily like the sex trafficking is going on. But
Well,
for
and I said that it's not only brothels. I know like in Costa Rica, they're everywhere. It's in bars, they're in restaurants. So you could see somebody from Asia or American sitting in a bar or a restaurant. That could be a flag.
okay,
So you talk to them and ask them a couple of questions and so forth. It's
okay.
not necessarily just
Yeah, sure. So it sounds like then, essentially, for our community, for the expats, it would be ideal if they could just kind of keep their eyes open and look for little signs, and then if something is telling you that this doesn't feel right, or I think something's off here, then basically report it to the embassy. You're probably better off reporting it and having
right.
them go ahead and try to look into it than just turning a blind eye to it or thinking, oh, it's nothing. It could be
Absolutely.
something very big. So when you say reporting it to the embassy, if it's an American that's in a country down there, they should go to the U.S. embassy or to the country's embassy.
I no, I would trust the U.S. embassy more.
Gotcha. Okay, and so if it's a Canadian,
Unfortunately, these traffickers, these rings have a lot of money and a lot of connections.
right?
And so we have reports of the victims, escaping and going to their local police, and the local police just brings them right back. So, it's unfortunate, but they have a lot of money and connections.
Wow.
So
Well,
yeah.
let me ask you then, why do you think it's so common in Central and South America? Is it because of situations like that where you can so easily buy police, or what do you think the reason is that it's so common?
Well, it's it follows the money, and it's cheap for Americans to visit there. It's cheap for the Europeans to visit there. It's relatively safe, especially Costa Rica. It's a tourist country, uh, and it's just not that much attention to it yet. We mentioned Thailand, Philippines. Everybody knows the problems there. With underage girls and so forth. There's been TV shows. There's been news accounts on it. When you talk about Costa Rica, for example, there hasn't been that there yet, and the heat is not there, and the attention is not to it, and we've caught American men over there, told their wife they were going fishing for the weekend, because it's like I said, it's relatively safe for them. It's touristy. It's cheap to get there, and it's just kind of the hub that they're using right now. One of the countries they're using, you know.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, you mentioned so the the man that you mentioned in Costa Rica that was said he was going fishing. That was same thing. That was sex trafficking at that point that he was involved in.
Yeah, he was there for the underage girls.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. Well, I guess the biggest thing then I want to ask you is, I mean, what else? Since what else would you want to share to raise awareness about this problem? With expats and
You
uh,
know, human trafficking is a very large problem. It's here in the United States. It's there. It's everywhere. It just doesn't exist in the ghettos or in foreign countries. We really need to step up our part in it in the United States and as Americans and citizens to worldwide stop this because it is the most atrocious thing that I've seen and including in the movies. I mean, it's horrible what these people go through, and you know they got drug trafficking, gun trafficking, and human trafficking, and human trafficking is making its way up to be the number one. It makes the traffickers a lot of money, and it's there's a saying that the supply of victims are endless, and it is, we really need to keep doing stepping up for ourselves to stop this because it's getting worse and worse. It's
yeah,
growing bigger. It's a proven fact as the economy goes down in a certain country, human trafficking goes up, and that's again the, the vision of money blinds us all. We all want a better life, we all want more money, and that's how these people get recruited. It's not just the ghettos. So the economy in the United States is not always the greatest, and human trafficking does exist here. We can tell you we've done a lot of local cases here in Florida. Um, of human trafficking. People are shocked when I say that, but we have them. So
yeah.
I just want people to know that it is a huge problem and it does happen here in their own backyards.
Yeah, it's not just overseas.
Now,
Right, which is, and the reason I, wanted to bring you on today is because I wanted to be able to talk about the overseas portion of it for anybody who is, essentially, I feel like this is an opportunity for Americans to be soldiers, against this terrible thing, and to, I guess really have some boots on the ground in some of these countries and try to help because I know that, I know my audience and Expat Kingdom, this isn't what we want to see happening to anyone, just because it's terrible. Like you said, it's the
sure.
thought of it. I mean, I have a 4-year-old daughter, and um, I'm probably over paranoid in the sense that I never get within more than 4 or 5 feet away from her when we're out in public, but. I just I'm not willing to risk it, and my wife is the same
So
way too. So
I'll say this point real quick. I'm a parent myself, and 10, 15 years ago, or when I was growing up in the '80s, we were worried about that guy in the van riding around. You want candy. Nowadays, this has opened up so large because that same guy in that van is now in your living room through your computer, and that's where a lot of recruiting is done. And it's opened it up worldwide.
yeah,
It's not just your local community that you have to look out for because like I said before, and this is the connection to overseas. A lot of our victims that get recruited here in the United States, they're not going to keep them here. People are looking for that person. They're going to send you overseas to a different country where nobody knows who you are and you don't exist.
yeah.
So just keep that in mind. With today's internet and so forth, it's opened that door up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we've picked on Costa Rica a lot today, and to be fair, I guess could you maybe run a list off of countries that are pretty, this is a big problem in those countries. So maybe any of the expat kingdom community that's watching this, maybe is in one of those countries, and they can just have their
So
eyes
I mean,
opened.
it's I haven't been to every country, of course, but the State Department keeps a list of this on countries, and every country in this world is listed. Okay, with human trafficking problems. I've been to Dominican Republic, I've been to Colombia, Venezuela, Costa Rica. Uh, I've seen it in all those countries, of course. Bad. Uh, but we have accounts in India right now. How bad it is in India. I mean, there's not one country I don't think that doesn't have it. You know, it's like I said, the State Department keeps that list, and you can go on their website and look because they actually rate how well the country does in the laws and so forth to fight.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so you know, the countries I've been to, absolutely in Central America, you know, it is bad. So I know I picked on Costa Rica. You know, Costa Rica is actually doing a good job in their laws of improving the laws for it, which is great. You know, doesn't mean it stops it. You
Right.
know,
Right. And so also I just wanted to, I know you mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to hit on it again because this is what makes you unique, I think, to a lot of other groups. Most groups involved in human trafficking are going to be raising awareness. Essentially, just let's raise awareness, which is great because it's a big problem. I know I'm currently at the time that we're recording this, it's June 2015, and I live in Atlanta. And a couple of years ago, this was huge in Atlanta as far as the amount of awareness that was being brought up about it. I
sure,
haven't heard as much about it in the last few years, and it's kind of quite died down a little bit. But I think that the awareness is still there, I guess, or it's raised. I don't think that people necessarily know what to do about it though.
right,
And what I like about your group and what you're doing is that you can actually go into some of these other countries. You can physically go down there and rescue them. And it in a lot of ways, I mean, excuse my language, but it makes you a badass in that aspect that you can actually go down there and save lives. So I think that's really
right.
cool. I think those are the big things I wanted to address today. And yeah, I would just say again, if there's anything else you want to share, I think you've probably covered everything. But if there is anything else that you wanted to share, go ahead and do that now. Um, and also, please let everybody know where they can find out more about your organization, if they want to help, how they can help, how they can get involved, whether that's
Sure,
financially or physically, whatever.
sure. You know, you can go to our website, breakingoutcorp.org, and you know what we do. We depend on donations for. Okay, and airline tickets, financial. What we do, we can't do without the proper funding. Um, our cases from the United States all the way to overseas, it costs money for us. So, we depend heavily on funding. Um, we have volunteer division where we have volunteers out there trying to help us, and we do have the educations, the seminars that we do. We teach children how to be safe. We teach parents what to look out for, how to be safe. So, we're trying to do everything we can for this, but we can't do it without the public support. You know, um, again, we work with law enforcement, local and federal, mostly federal, but they can't fund us that way. There's no grant that exists because we're one of the few that do what we do.
Yeah.
Being licensed and so forth. So it's a tough situation we're in, but I do believe it's one of the solutions to marry, the authorities and private together,
Yeah.
so that we can cover all our bases
Yeah.
for this.
If somebody, let's just say, had a huge bank full of Sky Miles, that they could actually
Oh,
donate those to
absolutely.
you. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm
Yeah,
sure, so that
that's
way,
very
yeah, that way maybe,
yeah.
maybe somebody's in a situation where they can help with Sky Miles, but maybe they don't have the cash or something like that. That could be a
Right,
great way for them to be able to
absolutely.
participate and help, and they could be saving somebody's life. So I think that's huge. Well, Jimmy, again, thank you for coming on today, and I hope that this will make an impact in our community, and I hope that we'll be able to support you guys with what you're doing, and just a huge thank you for what you're doing too, because I think it's a very noble cause, and I think it's awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you. And again, anybody that's interested, it's breakingout.org.
Breaking Out Corp, CORP, .org.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, Jimmy. Have a great day.
So thank you.